Before I tell you anything else, listen what happened to Layla. She was driving home late, tired but alert, when red and blue lights filled her rearview mirror. She pulled over calmly, window cracked. The officer stepped up and said, "Roll your window all the way down." In that moment, Layla had no idea whether complying would keep things calm or quietly give up her rights. One simple request stood between a routine stop and something much worse. I will tell you exactly when police can legally demand your window up or down, when you can refuse, and how to protect yourself without triggering escalation. These rules decide how a traffic stop unfolds. If this kind of clear legal guidance helps you, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Can police force you to roll your window up for a tint test? Window tint stops often begin before an officer ever speaks to you. An officer drives past, believes your tint looks dark, and decides that observation supports a stop. After the stop, many drivers lower their windows fully, which removes the visible tint. Officers then demand the window go back up so a tint meter can be placed on glass. That demand matters legally. When an officer touches, manipulates, or applies a device to your vehicle to gather information, courts treat that action as a search under the Fourth Amendment. The Supreme Court made this clear in United States versus Jones, explaining that physical intrusion onto private property for information gathering triggers constitutional protection. A vehicle qualifies as protected property. A tint meter requires direct contact with the window. That contact exists for one purpose: measuring compliance with law. Once framed that way, the officer must justify the search. There are only three paths: consent from the driver, a valid warrant, a recognized exception to the warrant requirement. Consent always exists as an option, though drivers who care about rights usually decline. Warrants do not exist during routine traffic stops for tint violations. That leaves an exception, usually the motor vehicle exception. For that exception to apply, the officer must establish probable cause before approaching the car. Probable cause requires more than curiosity or verification. Saying the stop occurred to check or confirm tint compliance weakens the legal basis. Courts expect officers to articulate specific observations, such as an appearance of total blackout or inability to see occupants at all. A vague belief that tint looked off creates a hunch rather than probable cause. This distinction matters later in reports and testimony. If the officer writes that the stop occurred to verify legality, suppression arguments grow stronger. Drivers should understand that refusing to roll the window up preserves constitutional protection and forces officers to justify their actions within the law rather than convenience. Equipment checks and the hidden expansion of a traffic stop. After a tint discussion, officers often shift tactics. Requests follow quickly. Turn on headlights, tap brakes, honk the horn. Each request feels minor, though legally each expands a stop. Equipment checks count as searches when they require driver participation or vehicle manipulation. Without a regulatory framework, these actions fall outside the scope of a traffic stop. Traffic stops exist to address specific violations, not to audit a vehicle for potential defects. Some states authorize safety inspections through statutes or administrative schemes. Those laws provide notice that compliance checks occur as part of roadway regulation. In those jurisdictions, officers operate within a defined regulatory search framework. Outside that structure, equipment demands lack legal support. The danger lies in pretext. An officer who stops a vehicle for tint may discover a bulb out or a brake light delay after requesting demonstrations. That discovery creates a new violation, which can escalate consequences. Citations follow. Arrest authority grows. Search incident to arrest becomes possible. Courts analyze scope and duration. A stop tied to tint remains narrow. Expanding into full equipment inspection without statutory authority risks constitutional violation. Officers still make these requests because many drivers comply without question. Drivers benefit from recognizing the shift. Equipment demands signal expansion beyond the original reason for the stop. Calm refusal forces officers to rely on what they already observed rather than fishing for additional issues. Understanding this boundary helps drivers avoid unintentionally authorizing broader searches. Silence, combined with polite refusal, maintains legal footing while reducing escalation risk. Out-of-state vehicles and why local law still controls. Drivers often believe registration state rules travel with them. That belief creates risk. When a vehicle enters another state, local traffic laws govern operation within that jurisdiction. Courts consistently hold that states may enforce their equipment and safety standards on any vehicle traveling their roads. Window tint laws illustrate this clearly. A vehicle compliant in one state may violate standards elsewhere. Officers use this reality during traffic stops. A driver explains compliance back home. The explanation carries no legal weight on that roadway. Courts support enforcement based on location rather than registration origin. This principle matters during long trips. Tint, plate placement, lighting, and windshield modifications vary widely. Officers rely on these differences to justify stops. Once stopped, questioning follows. Drivers should research destination rules before travel. Awareness reduces surprise and limits escalation. Arguing home state compliance rarely helps and often extends the encounter. If you find this breakdown helpful, take a second to like the video and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and ensures you get more clear, real-world legal guidance like this. Can police force you to roll your window down? Window down demands usually rest on officer safety. Courts grant officers broad discretion to protect themselves during traffic stops. Under Pennsylvania versus Mims, officers may order drivers out of vehicles when safety concerns exist. Courts describe that intrusion as minimal. Officers apply the same reasoning to windows. They argue that full visibility reduces risk. When a driver resists, officers often escalate by ordering exit instead. Courts typically support that sequence. Drivers face a strategic decision. Keeping a window partially lowered allows communication and document transfer. Refusing entirely increases tension. Officers then cite demeanor, behavior, or movement as safety concerns. Once safety concerns enter the record, officers gain authority to control the scene. Exit orders follow. Passengers receive the same treatment under Maryland versus Wilson. At that stage, window arguments lose relevance. The law favors compliance with exit commands. Fighting over window position often produces worse outcomes than strategic cooperation. That reality frustrates many drivers, though courts prioritize officer discretion. Understanding this hierarchy helps drivers choose wisely. A partially lowered window maintains communication while reducing escalation risk. Arguing principle roadside often triggers authority expansion rather than protection. The goal remains control without confrontation. Knowing when the law shifts power allows drivers to preserve rights while avoiding unnecessary force. Can police open your door without permission? Police authority over your door follows strict limits. Opening a vehicle door counts as physical intrusion. Courts treat that intrusion as a search when it serves an investigative purpose. Officers require a lawful basis before doing so. A key distinction matters here. Ordering a driver to exit differs from opening the door independently. Courts allow exit orders under officer safety doctrine. Door opening without that step crosses into a different category. The Ninth Circuit addressed this in United States versus Ngamizi, holding that opening a car door during a traffic stop constituted a Fourth Amendment search without adequate justification. Officers sometimes claim door opening improves visibility of hands or interior. Courts reject that reasoning when unsupported by specific safety facts. General uncertainty fails to meet constitutional standards. Officers must articulate a concrete reason tied to danger or evidence preservation. Drivers face risk during these moments. Sudden movements, raised voices, or attempts to shut the door after opening often escalate the encounter. Officers later describe such reactions as threatening conduct. That narrative expands police authority quickly. The safest legal posture involves remaining still, speaking calmly, and allowing officers to issue clear commands. If an officer intends to remove a driver, Exit orders typically follow. Door opening as a fishing tactic lacks legal support, though roadside enforcement still occurs. Understanding this boundary helps drivers recognize when police action exceeds lawful scope. Documentation through recording preserves evidence for later review while avoiding escalation during the stop itself. Breaking the window and forcing removal. Window breaking represents the highest escalation during traffic stops. Officers justify this action by claiming immediate safety threats or impaired driving concerns. Courts often side with officers when records show escalating refusal combined with alleged danger cues. A frequent trigger involves claimed odor of marijuana. Officers argue that odor suggests impaired driving, which authorizes removal for investigation. Driving under influence laws apply nationwide, regardless of legalization status. Courts accept that reasoning broadly. Officers also rely on behavioral descriptions. Raised windows, locked doors, silence, and phone recording appear later in reports as evasive conduct. Combined, these factors support force claims directed at the vehicle rather than the person. Courts describe window breaking as removal of a barrier rather than force against an individual. That framing protects officers legally. Judges defer heavily to officer testimony when video lacks full context or audio clarity. From a driver perspective, escalation often begins earlier. Refusal to comply with exit commands almost always leads to forced removal. Window integrity provides little protection once officers assert safety risk. While many view this outcome as extreme, legal precedent favors control over de-escalation during roadside encounters. Drivers benefit most from recognizing the moment authority shifts and adjusting behavior to avoid physical force. The partial window strategy. Lowering a window partially offers a middle path. Communication remains possible. Documents pass through. Visual access improves enough to reduce tension. Officers assess surroundings constantly. Time of day, passenger movement, tint darkness, and body language shape safety judgments. Courts support officer discretion in these assessments, as explained in Pennsylvania versus Mims. Partial lowering carries risk during high-stress stops. Sudden passenger movement may prompt officers to escalate regardless of window height. Night stops increase sensitivity to limited visibility. Drivers choosing this strategy should remain still, speak clearly, and avoid rapid gestures. Smooth movements reduce misinterpretation. Silence beyond required identification limits exposure. The approach requires situational awareness. Multiple occupants, dark tint, or late hours shift officer perception quickly. In those cases, partial lowering may fail to prevent escalation. This tactic offers flexibility rather than immunity. Used correctly, it preserves communication while limiting intrusion. Used poorly, it accelerates control measures. Awareness remains the deciding factor. Exiting the vehicle and securing the interior. Exit orders change the encounter fundamentally. Once outside, officers control positioning and movement. Drivers still retain rights over the vehicle interior. Locking doors after exit remains lawful. That action raises the legal threshold for entry. Officers then require consent, exigent circumstances, or warrant authority. Police reactions vary. Some express frustration. Others attempt verbal pressure. Locked doors often prompt claims of suspicion, though courts require objective justification beyond irritation. Silence matters here. Statements create openings. Questions invite expansion. Calm refusal to answer preserves legal position while complying with physical commands. Search authority depends on articulation. Officers must explain why entry serves safety or evidence preservation. Absent that explanation, entry risks suppression later. Drivers who understand this sequence gain leverage without confrontation. Compliance with exit orders combined with vehicle security balances safety and rights effectively. Outro. Traffic stops turn on small decisions made in seconds. Window position, tone, movement, and timing shape how much authority police gain and how fast a stop escalates. Knowing when officers can demand control And when they must justify, it gives you leverage without confrontation. The goal never involves winning an argument on the roadside. The goal involves leaving safely with your rights intact. If this breakdown helped you understand how the law actually works during a stop, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. These rules change outcomes, and the next video breaks down common police tactics and the smartest responses drivers can use to protect themselves every time.